Did you know? In Super Mario 64, when Mario falls from a high enough distance, he'll take fall damage. However, if he lands on a snowy surface, the snow will absorb the impact and Mario will be stuck in the snow for a few seconds before getting out. There is an error where this same cushioning effect and animation are triggered when Mario falls onto frozen ponds from a great height. Another mistake in Mario 64 can be seen when Mario performs his trip kick move. During the animation, one of the buttons on his overalls simply disappears. After the player gets all 120 power stars, they gain access to the roof of Peach's castle, where they will run into Yoshi. Yoshi mentions how it's been so long since he's seen Mario, but his dialogue starts off with a spelling error. Yoshi says, "Mario, it that really you?" where it should have been an is. There's been a number of times where a minor slip-up can end up halting the player's progress or soft-locking the game. Super Mario Bros. 3 has several instances of being unable to finish a level if certain things are done in a specific order. One instance of pure misfortune can happen in World 5. When an N-Spade card spawns in the overworld map and a Hammer Bro happens to walk over it, the two will combine and move across the map indefinitely. This ends up soft-locking the game, and all the player can do is reset. After defeating Mario 2's final boss, Wart, a door will open that leads to the end of the game. Beating Wart disables the level scrolling, and if the player chooses to play as Luigi for this level, they can perform a glitch that renders the game unbeatable. This glitch was showcased by a YouTube user who recorded the event on tape in the early 90s. If Luigi jumps high enough, he'll be able to reach the room's ceiling. If he defeats Wart off-screen, Luigi will be trapped on the ceiling and won't be able to get back down due to scrolling being disabled. Another case of soft locking is found in a unique version of Super Mario Bros. In 1986, Hudson Soft released a port of the game titled Super Mario Bros. Special, which released for the Sharp X1 and PC-88 line of Japanese computers. This version has several unique features and a few changes to level design. Mario Bros. Special omits the original game's warp zones, though it seems like the idea was tampered with at some point. Jumping over the pipe near the end of World 1-2 leads to the level's bonus room, with an additional pipe leading to the end of the level. However, World 4-2's corresponding area features a singular warp pipe like the original. This pipe leads to nowhere, and if the player enters the pipe, they'll be stuck in there until the timer runs out. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is known to be punishingly difficult, and has some intentional traps for players. However, some of the game's traps appear to be oversights. In World 3-1, there's an underground bonus level. Its exit is cut off by blocks which can only be broken with a power-up. There's a hidden mushroom in this area, but if the player gets hit by the neighboring piranha plant, they will be stuck. Some of the earliest mistakes in Mario games can be found in the title's instruction manuals, like with the booklet for Super Mario Bros. 2. Some versions of the manual switched the names for Birdo and Ostro around, but this was likely due to the error being present in the game's credits. This mistake reappeared in the Super Mario All-Stars version of Mario 2, but was fixed for the Super Mario Advance release on Game Boy Advance. Another error in Mario 2's credits is the spelling of the enemy Clawgrip, which was spelled Clawglip. This spelling was present in the original game, All-Stars, and the Japanese version of Mario Advance. This may be linked to the Japanese game, as the sounds for L and R in the Japanese language overlap. Mario 2's manual also states that when the player enters subspace, they might be able to obtain a heart to extend their life meter. The heart being referenced is an item only found in the game's original Japanese template, Doki Doki Panic. In Mario 2, mushrooms increase the life meter, which funnily enough was mentioned on the page right beside the mistake. The screenshot used for Phanto was also taken from the original Doki Doki Panic, instead of Mario 2, where Phanto's sprite is always smiling in-game. Instruction manuals around this time were also subject to odd translation choices, sometimes foregoing localization altogether. The manual for Super Mario Land transliterates the Japanese names of the game's enemies, including those derivative from the original Mario Bros. The Goombo enemy, for instance, is called Chibibo, a portmanteau of Chibi and the the Japanese name for Goomba, Kuribo. Princess Daisy's name on page 13 of the original booklet is written out as Daisy Princess, though all other mentions of her in the manual write it out as Princess Daisy. It's likely a carryover of the Japanese styling of her name, where the name comes before the title, being Deiji Hime. The version of Mario Land released on Virtual Console is also the original version of the game, as opposed to the 1.1 version, which fixed a few glitches along with other minor revisions. What's odd about this choice is that most games released on the service use the latest revision of the game in question. The Virtual Console release of Donkey Kong on Game Boy has a minor flub of its own. The game's description on the eShop says it came out in June of 1981, despite it being released in 1994. The eShop date falls more in line with the original arcade Donkey Kong's release, but even then, the arcade game actually came out in July, not June. What makes this mistake even more glaring is that fans commonly refer to the Game Boy game as Donkey Kong 94, referencing the year it came out. In Super Mario Land 2, Mario actually has two different sets of sprites. One sprite set is used for darker levels, while the alternate set is used for every other setting, save for the Space Zone area. Mario's back-facing sprite had a few changes made to it before the game was released, though these changes weren't carried over to the alternate set. However, the back sprite used in the normal levels is the one used for darker set pieces, and as a result, the sprite can actually be seen through. It's harder to notice on the original Game Boy hardware, but is more evident on things like the Game Boy Color, and the mistake also applies to several other sprites in the game. In Super Mario World, the Koopalings Iggy and Lemmy share the exact same hairstyle, though in earlier depictions of the characters, like in Mario 3, their hairstyles are more distinct, with Iggy's hair tufts facing forward. Iggy's original hairstyle does exist in the game's data, but for one reason or another went unused, though it does show up properly in the game's credits sequence. Mistakes have often extended into Mario's RPG adventures. In Super Mario RPG, there's a visual error that can occur if the player lets Croco bring Mallow's HP down to 0 during their second battle. Croco has a knack for stealing items from the player's active party, but after Mallow's defeat, Croco will only try to steal items from Mallow. Not only this, but Mallow will stand upright as if he's been revived, but he's still unable to fight. Paper Mario, the Thousand-Year Door, has a few visual errors of its own. For example, throughout the game, the character Koops is inconsistently depicted with either 3 or 4 fingers on each of his hands. Another visual mistake relates to Luigi. Luigi's cap is made up of 2 separate textures, one for the cap and another for the L emblem, which are stored separately. This was done to prevent the L from being mirrored whenever Luigi's model had to turn around, but despite the effort, there's one instance where Luigi and the emblem aren't aligned. In the opening cutscene where Luigi goes to the mailbox, the emblem gets flipped for a brief moment before going back to normal. Another mishap in the game seems to be a basic logic error. When the player defeats Grodus at the Palace of Shadow, the sequence that follows will give the player the option to attack him, though at the risk of Princess Peach's life. If they choose not to attack, Grodus will be furious the player dared to defy him. If they choose to attack, Grodus will tell them to stop talking. It seems the dialogue for these choices was reversed, but really, neither choice affects progression at all. There's been a number of books tied to the Mario franchise that spread a few falsehoods about the series. In 2015, Dark Horse Comics released the Super Mario Encyclopedia, an official guide covering the first 30 years of the franchise, with the English release coming out in 2018. This release had been met with some controversy for a few inaccuracies, including typos and false information. For example, it states that the first unmodified release of Super Mario Bros. 2 outside Japan was in 2014 on the Wii U's Virtual Console, when it actually first released 7 years earlier on the Wii Virtual Console. It also claims the PAL block debuted in Super Mario Bros. When they actually debuted in the arcade game Mario Bros. Without the Super. The book also misspells the name of the Wiggler enemy as Wriggler multiple times, which can be seen on pages 71 and 86. In Super Mario World, an oddity occurs with the Wiggler enemy. If the player dies above a Wiggler, on their way to the bottom of the screen, they'll still make contact with the Wiggler and even score points for doing doing so. At the end of the level Donut Plains 2, though unable to be seen through normal means, there's a buzzy beetle hidden inside the wall near the warp pipe. Due to the level's slow auto-scrolling, the player can't see it, and even if it could be seen, it would just end up falling through the floor. Speaking of buzzy beetles, they, along with Koopa shells, are the center of a glitch that's quite easy to pull off. If the player puts the shell on one of the enemies in front of a steep slope and tries to kick it up the slope, it will instead go right through the slope's wall. Did you also know that the old man who claims his Raichu evolved in the original Pokemon games does so because of a translation mishap? Or that the Spanish versions of the original games have a startling amount of translation errors? For more facts, check out the Did You Know Gaming video on mistakes in Pokemon games.